everyone. Welcome to Uptown Studios Live. I am here with Shani Thornton, and we're going to talk about taking care of families when things get tough. First, I need to explain that I'm in my RV and I'm in Idaho, and coming to you live from Idaho, and it's raining. It's actually raining. It's like, God, I wish they would send this to California. So, Shani, tell me about your Child Life Mommy website. First, tell me what it is.
Okay, so the website is a blend of my work as a professional, as a child life specialist, and as a parent. And I put it together, oh my gosh, I want to say 8.5 years ago, to really just have a platform to explain the role of a child life specialist, both in a hospital setting, but also community-based, and how you can incorporate those two skill sets of parenting, caregiving, child life work, and utilize some of the great resources that we do in child life within homes, within your own, with your own children, within school settings, to just help kids cope with different things in their lives that are hard, whether it's something small of going to the doctor's visit to get, their vaccines, or going back to school, or coping with a new sibling. There's lots of different things that happen. So the site is really there to provide parents and caregivers and other professionals with some good resources.
Well, and you do a lot of grief work, don't you?
I do, yeah. So my role as a child life specialist is really to provide psychosocial and emotional support to children of all ages and developments, and their caregivers and their parents, to help them cope with really challenging things in life. So illness is a big one that I help families with. Grief and loss, bereavement work. I work with a hospice agency as well, and help support children of adult patients and also pediatric hospice patients. And then just helping kids cope with different types of transitions. So whether it's like the return to school, or just coping with the transition of having a new sibling, or, a divorce, things like that, incorporating all of those therapeutic play and creative arts, helping kids express themselves, understand what's happening in a developmentally appropriate way, and then giving them that outlet to explore, play, and then adapt to really healthy coping skills.
And this is all ages, right?
What
do you start at? How young?
Infancy. So child life specialists start right at infancy through early adulthood. So primarily in my practice, I'm outside of the hospital setting. So I have a private practice, and I primarily see kids between the ages of 2 years old to adolescents to 18.
So there's a story on how you got here. You got to tell me, how did you end up doing this? This is, and the reason that you're here is because it's so interesting. I didn't even know that there were specialists like you.
Yeah, it is. I think every person who gets in this field, we all have kind of our weird journey of how we got here. So mine kind of started, I grew up with a mom who, thankfully, I live right next door to now, and she was diagnosed with a really rare autoimmune illness when I was very young. So I grew up comfortably through the hospital, supporting her, helping her, and watching how this chronic illness really impacted her, but impacted the whole family. And I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have somebody to really educate me on what her illness was and what was happening. But I know that I was really, really comfortable playing with all of her medical stuff. We would go to the hospital. I would take the bends home, and I'd do medical play at home. And that was my way of processing what was happening. Fast forward to college, I got my degree as a recreation administration and started working at the time it was San Diego Children's Hospital. They had a convalescent hospital on their main campus. It's now Rady's Children's. And I was working there as a recreation therapist assistant, and I loved it. I was working primarily with kids who were, really impaired, and they lived in this convalescent hospital. And I was there to bring, play and joy and take them out into the community. But all along with that, there was something that I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something else. Like, I really feel it, and I can't figure out what it was. So I was that crazy new green person following around every staff member, nursing, OT, speech. anybody. And I was like, tell me about your profession. Like, I know it's going to be hospital wise for me. It's going to be kids and families, but I can't figure it out. And, probably like 4 months into my role there, we had one of our patients was referred to the main campus at the hospital because she had to have surgery. And they said, oh, we're going to contact Child Life. And I'm like, what is Child Life?
That's what I said. What is Child Life?
Like, it's such a weird name too. And my boss was like, oh, they help prepare kids for, medical procedures. And I'm like, okay. So I went home and Googled, and I mean, every light bulb was like going off in my head. I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. It made perfect sense. So I ended up going to grad school, got my master's specifically in child life in New York City, worked in the hospitals, and then just saw that gap in service within the community and brought it to fill that gap out here. So
how many people take this up? I mean, are there plenty of child life psychologists that are
there's more. I feel like the field is starting to explode with students. They're really interested in it. We're starting, they're just starting to learn about it. And I think the awareness has been the help of social media a lot on kind of just spreading it, because there really wasn't anything out there. The profession is very new. It's like been around since the late 50s. So it's really adapted, and it's starting to grow. The problem though is there's not enough positions, and there's also not enough internship sites. So you have to go through a full internship at a hospital underneath the supervision of a certified child life specialist. And so it is incredibly hard for students right now. It's incredibly competitive for them to get into the field. And then once they get in the field, to then find a job. So that's tough. There's just not enough funding. Child life is not a billable service within the hospitals. And so a lot of our funding at hospitals are a little bit of hospital money, but primarily it's grants and donations.
So did you end up working at a hospital?
I did.
So
I worked.
Tell me about, so you got your degree, and then where did you go?
And then I actually was working as a child life assistant prior to, as I was going through my master's. And then I did my internship there, and then got hired on at another hospital as an inpatient rehab. And I got to work. It was unique because in our role, even then, it wasn't just a basic inpatient pediatric unit. It was kids who were going through rehab for, they've had surgery on their spine, or they had a brain tumor, or they have cerebral palsy, and they're going to be in rehab, inpatient for months. And they are going through all of that work. And it was my role of helping support them through that hospitalization, helping them through coping with the collaborative work with OT and PT and speech. And it was great. So I worked there for a while, and then eventually kind of moved.
Where was that?
That was at Rusk, in NYU Langone. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Started.
Yeah.
And
so on the East Coast for a long time.
So you're doing rehab and child life work at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. So my role was a child life specialist on the rehab unit.
Okay. And do they assign child life people to different units?
They do. So child life within the hospital are everywhere from the emergency department to day surgery to specific clinics and specialties. They're also just in the intensive care unit. They're working with children of adult patients. So there's a lot of child life specialists who are getting hired on. And it might not even be a children's hospital or children's unit. It's an adult unit, but it's the kids, right? It's the grandkids. They need the support.
I have more questions. So how do you get referred to the patients? Who makes that referral?
So for me personally, is in my private practice, or if you were within the hospital?
If you were at the hospital, let's say if you were at the hospital.
There's so in the hospital, there's a lot of educating that goes on. There's they're constantly educating the staff about their program. And once it's established and you find, you build that rapport, they'll get a referral, whether it's a referral through the computer from the doctor, like an order, or they can get paged, or they get, a phone call of like, Child Life needs to be here, or Child Life is so established that it is routine that they are working with all of those kids on that unit. They're part of the medical team.
So can a patient or a parent request from their doctor? Is that a way to help create an awareness around it? It's like, I'm having surgery and it's serious and I don't know how to talk to my kids.
Yes.
That would be
totally.
Okay. Yeah. Or grandma is dying. I don't know how to talk to my kids.
Yeah. Do you have Child Life to help support me? We're different than social workers. So a lot of people will get us confused with social workers. But we have a different type. We're very similar skill set, but it's also a little unique with more of like the child development background and the therapeutic play and creative arts and coping skills and all of that. So 100%, you bring your kids into the emergency department, ask for Child Life right then. And if they don't have them within the ER, they might be in another unit, but they can be paged to come down and support your kids.
Okay. I think that's one of the most important things that we learned from this discussion here is how to request services, because this is not something you plan for. This is something that happens and then you go, oh my God, I'm not prepared for this. How do I talk to my kids? Right?
How do I help? How do I hold my child when they have to get stitches? The doctors want to hold them down and have them strapped down. And I feel like that's not right. It's not. There's other ways that you can do it. Parents can be present. Parents can hold their child in a comfort hold. You can do topical numbing creams. Like, you can have distraction and coping skills. So you're decreasing the trauma and the anxiety that can happen to the kid.
Every parent has that. Every single parent has that.
Yeah.
At the minimum, it's like how to hold your kid when they're getting stitches or have to get a vaccine or any of that. Those are great. Do you have tips on those kinds of things on your website? I saw that.
Lots of tips, lots of really basic information of 7 tips when you bring your kids to the dentist that you can do, 5 tips you can bring when you bring to the doctor, how to hold your child, how to incorporate different types of distraction, how to prepare your kids. That's the biggest piece.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so everyone take it down. childlifemommy.com.
Yeah.
So many tips. I learned so much from your website, and I have adult kids, but I have grandkids, and I'm around them. And if they get hurt, it's like, I just know what I did with my kids, but I learned so much from your website. Really helpful stuff. I really appreciate that you share your information. And then when people really need you, that they can call. So now let's talk about some of your work as through Child Life Mommy. Let's show some pictures of you working, and then we'll talk through them. So when did you transition? When did you start Child Life Mommy?
So I feel like the private practice has been about 6 years. I started it in New York a few years prior to me knowing that I was going to relocate to back to my hometown in Loomis. But and then I've been here for 4 years, and I kind of relaunched it a year after we moved. So say roughly 6 years. I've been doing different community work though too, between the blog. I wrote a children's book. I provided bereavement as a volunteer, a bereavement facilitator at a children's hospital in New York. And that was all after I left the hospital. So there's been a lot of building blocks of community-based work. But yeah, so primarily I'm seeing kids within their own homes.
So tell me about this picture. This is the one with the ambulance.
It is. So this is a lovely family. This is a child who was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He's had it removed, and now he's going through, he already went through radiation. He was getting ready to go through chemotherapy. So this is a child who was hospitalized for a short period of time, has to continue going through treatment, but he's not in the hospital to work with a child life specialist. So the family is really kind of trying to unpack the process of everything that has just happened. coping with taking new medications, preparing to go through chemo. They also have a younger child who they're trying to also support.
I see that. And that's just as important, that you get
Yes.
sibling support and they know what's going on and why is he getting all this attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a big piece of it. And to make sure that there's a safe outlet of communication. So this work here was helping them explore through medical play. She was all about the hospital stuff. So I brought Playmobil hospital theme, and she was just playing. We incorporated like I bring cloth dolls like these.
Yeah.
And the kids will decorate them and they'll make them into their own patient. So once they were done, then we talked about getting access to getting chemotherapy and how it goes into the veins and what that means and how it travels through the body, all in a way that developmentally they would understand. So the way I talk to kids who are, 8 years old is very different than the way I'm going to talk to them when they're 2 or when they're, 15. Sure. You're changing it. Yeah. So we did a lot of
so you open it up. Are you scared and talking about fears and and then so let's say just in this family, when do you bring the parents in?
Actually, the mom was part of this. So she was at the table, and it was a great way for her to see how I was kind of modeling how to let the kids have a sense of control over it, how I was validating emotions, normalizing things for them. And then she was able to take away a lot of good support. And also she got the validation. This is so hard for parents to cope with. I mean, to have a child who has an illness, whether it's a chronic illness, they've had a medical trauma, they're going through something, it just rips everything apart from you. Your whole lives are completely changed and shifted. And how do you hold it together to then hold it together for your kids? You need the support as well. So there's a lot of support that go to the parents as well, and just education for them and things that they can do at home that aren't hard. It's kind of it's reminding parents that they are empowered, right? Empowering them that they do have these skill sets. We're kind of just like dusting off a little bit of it for them. We're saying, try this, try that. And they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. Like, yes, you can. You absolutely can.
It's amazing. I think that this work is just amazing. And I regret that I didn't even know about this until just recently when I heard about you and your work. And I went, you need to be on the show. And so let's go to the next picture. And then you can talk a little bit about this next one.
Sure. So this one was a dental prep. So this was a child who had a dental procedure that didn't go over so well. And he had to go back in and have some more work done. And he was really traumatized from the first incident, like screaming, full on anxiety attack. The mom was like a hot mess. And they were like, how are we going to bring him back in? And the next office they went to said, we're going to give you one shot, that this kid's going to be able to do it. Or if he doesn't, then we're going to need to sedate him to have, fillings.
Oh my.
And I was like, he's so young. He's only 4. I was like, let me prepare him. Let me work through the past trauma that he had, and we'll prepare him and create a coping plan for him. And we did. We had like a hour session. We played. We worked through his past trauma. I prepared him for what was going to happen in a way that he would understand. I incorporate a lot of different senses of what he's going to see, what he's going to feel, what he's going to taste, touch, all of that. And then what are the choices that he has during it? So you're kind of empowering him with that control again. And he did beautifully. He was able to go through the procedure, get his filling. There was he was not sedated for it at all. And it worked beautifully.
Wow, that was that's amazing, because how many kids go once and then it is like for the rest of their lives they hate it. So maybe it is having some prep for that first. I know that the dentists today like to see kids when they have their first tooth, so that they get used to going to the dentist and having somebody poke around and look, and so that they're gently getting them ready for anything that might happen, and they like the dentist.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you do any of that? How many dentists do you work with? You need to have referrals from dentists.
I do. I get referrals from dentists. And I also, because, I'm not able to see all patients, and I've created, I wrote a children's book about going to the doctor. It's called It's Time for Your Checkup, What to Expect When Going to a Doctor Visit. And then I did one for going to the dentist as well. So those are all on my website. And the one that's for going to the dentist, it's like on Shutterfly. So you literally can read it with your kids, and it prepares you and your children for what to expect when they do go to the dentist for the first
Oh
time. Like,
man,
what is
that
that
is
going to
super.
be like?
That's super.
Yeah.
That's part of my marketing plan. In the when we help people with their marketing, I go and I give it away. I tell you exactly what it is that you need to do, and just trust that there is going to be a time where you need me, and then you'll remember that I've given all this information away. And
Absolutely.
I think that it's super that you do that. That you're sharing a wealth of knowledge, and for the cost of a book, that's pretty cheap,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. It's just
Okay.
re-empowering them, right? That
Yeah.
you can do this stuff.
Yeah. Let's go to the next picture. Okay. Talk about this one. This is in a
So
school setting.
it was a school setting. So child life specialists in hospitals, we do things called a teddy bear clinic. So it's really where we bring medical play. So it's bringing doctor kits that have, pretend and real stuff and stuffed animals, and you let kids just kind of explore and play. I was able to bring this to a classroom setting. So my goals when I go to classrooms are really to educate kids on what it's like to go to the doctor. Every kid has a connection with the doctor, whether it's when they, had to get their, tonsils taken out, or grandma had surgery, or there's some connection to medical hospital. And it's a great way to clear up misconceptions for kids that going to the doctor is not a bad thing, that they're not a bad boy or bad girl. You're giving them coping strategies for what to do, that, hey, you know what, next time you have to go in and you have to get your shots, you can ask your mom if you can sit on her lap, and you can sit this way. The other thing you can do is you can either watch or you can look away, because that's the other thing too. Sometimes the nursing staff and even the parents were like, don't look. But that's not always helpful.
Right.
A lot of kids and adults need to see, and then actually helps them feel more at ease. So it's here we're doing medical play. We were blowing bubbles through the anesthesia mask. So kids who have to go in for surgery, you kind of give them the real medical stuff, and you're doing it in a way that's non-threatening, that they become familiar with it. And so it's not so scary.
That's so important. And what age kids are these? Are these
Were kindergartners. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was the reason that you were called in?
Just to come in and do some education for them.
Do they ever ask you to come in because there's a child that's sick that their
Yes.
classmates need? But tell me about that.
Yeah. So if I've had referrals where there's been some sort of trauma, whether there's been a child who was diagnosed with something, or there was an incident that happened, and coming in and kind of doing a debrief, right? And meeting those kids where they're at, again, educating them at their development so they understand, giving them an opportunity to express themselves through play and through art, and then creating a coping plan. So kids who've got, chronic illness like diabetes, or if they were diagnosed with cancer, or they had a loved one die, kind of coming in and providing that support for the kids, but also for the teachers and the parents, and giving them additional resources so that they know that these conversations are happening and how they can continue it at home or in their other settings in a really healthy way.
So how often do you get called to go into a classroom?
Well, because of COVID, it wasn't happening a lot.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
Wasn't happening too much last year, but as kids are going back to school, I've gotten phone calls to help. Even with that, with the transition back to school, there's a lot of anxiety with the return. And these kids have been pretty much out of school for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I know it as a parent too, like I feel that intense anxiety of like, how are they going to do? How's their stamina going to be? They're nowhere where they're supposed to be at because they pretty much have missed a year and a half.
Yeah.
So there's a lot
when you're 5, and that's a lot when you're 6. right?
Yeah. And it's a lot when you're in junior high. Like I have a seventh
Yeah.
grader and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And I also have, kids who've got learning differences. So my two kids have a learning difference. So I also have that anxiety of like, they're already kind of struggling. Now they're really struggling.
Yeah.
How can we
Yeah.
support them through this transition? So it's
So,
providing parents with tools.
so would teachers call you?
Yeah.
And how is your fee structure on something like that?
So it depends on if it's like a one-time thing. I usually just have a set fee. There's a lot of schools that have, a parent-teacher committee or a PTA, and so they'll get funds from that to be able to provide support to pay for it.
I think that that's excellent. That's the kind of stuff, especially with COVID, and you have the very young students that have missed 20% of their life has been spent at home, and then they spend another year and a half, and then
Yeah,
they're going back to school and they're different. Um,
exactly.
so important. Your work is so important.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the stuff that you do. So let's go back to us live, and I just want to talk about how do you uh, how do you get your clients? And I know that you're in Loomis. Are you trying to stay in Roseville, or
Now
are
I'm
you
kind of all over. I'm all
you
over.
are
Yeah. So I primarily try to stay within, I'd say Placer County, Folsom, El Dorado Hills, and then I go to Sacramento too. I have a lot of Sacramento clients. So I
uh,
go to families' homes and work with them. I do telehealth if that works. And then I run a lot of workshops. So if there's an organization or there's been a trauma within a work setting and you're working with kids, like whatever it is, I will meet within that organization and provide support, whether it's in person or virtual. So people can
okay.
contact me and then we kind of just go with what, if it, schedule wise, if it's going to work out, and also if it's within my scope. And I'm really honest with families and I'm like, this is the role I have. This is kind of my lane. If it starts to go in areas where it's not really within my scope of service,
Yeah.
I know an amazing group of colleagues that I refer them out to.
Oh, see, and that's just perfect. I like the corporate structure. If you have do you do any adult work, like coworkers that lost a child,
Yes.
or do
Yeah. I
you?
actually recently
Because
had
that's
one. Yeah, I had one just a few months ago where there was a trauma it was a pediatric work setting, and a trauma happened to one of the staff members, and not one of the children who come, but their own child had died. And so I did a debrief for trauma work for the staff on how to support themselves because they were going through it when all
Mhm,
of
mhm.
the crisis was happening, and then how to support that staff member when they do return back to work.
Oh man, that is so important.
Yeah,
Grief, counseling, and therapy. It hits us all. We all are going to lose people in our lives. Um, but when it's kids, it's especially hard.
it
Um,
is.
so how what do you think your next steps are? How do you get bigger?
I don't know.
What
I
happens
need
when you want to grow?
I know, I know. I'm in that juggling stage right now of like the kids have returned back to school. So all of my clients have shifted to afternoons, but I still have preschoolers that I see during the day while my kids are at school. And then it's just trying to figure out the afternoon schedules. So it's life. It's a life journey. I just try to figure out what's going to work, what's going to fit for my family, for my lifestyle, but also for the families that I'm working with, because I want to make sure that I'm giving them exactly what they need.
Yeah, I think that the call to action for everybody that's watching this is to go to childlifemommy.com, read all the free materials that Shani shares, because she's got a wealth of information that's going to help us all in our paths through this life, this windy road that we're all on. And then you're going to know her, and when you need that help, I know, Shani, if you can't help them, you're going to refer them to somebody that can. And
Absolutely.
is that's pretty accurate? Anything that you can leave people with in this
Yeah,
last
I
30 seconds?
I would say you can follow me on Child Life Mommy. There's an email notification, give subscription, right? But I'm also very active on social media. So Instagram and Facebook. I provide a lot of great material on there that you can use, and it's free stuff. You can always send me a message. I will be happy to give you direct links and information and resources, or provide you with the right person who can get you that information.
You're awesome. Shani, thank you so much for joining us and telling me about Child Life Mommy and all the good work that you do. And everyone, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 11 right here. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.